Welcome to the March 10th Coordination Circle for the Lifeboat Academy. And as is our custom, we start with a land acknowledgement. And I have been in meetings where other people are taking on the land acknowledgements lately, and I've been enjoying the variety. And so want to continue to encourage people to experiment with their own version of land acknowledgements. But actually, since I haven't done one in a couple meetings, I feel like I would like to take this myself. And we start with the land because the land was here before we were, and the land will continue to be here long after we are gone. And so we start with a reminder of to center the land and decenter our egos. And there's nothing wrong with our egos. There's nothing wrong with us having a perspective, but we need to remember that we are part of a much bigger organism than just ourselves. And so that creates a context for this meeting and a context for how we are with each other, realizing that it's easy to get into a very small view of the world, a very big view of ourselves, and a very small view of the land. And so we lean into traditions which have been upheld for countless generations in many, many different indigenous communities as a reminder for how we want to be with each other. And a reminder that it's all about relationship. It's all about how we relate to ourselves, to each other, to the land, to the future generations, and to past generations. And so in honor of that gift that we have been given from Indigenous wisdom, we also have an obligation to care and to right any wrongs where they may have happened and to heal relationships to the extent that we can. And I'm reminded today of I think it's from the Talmud. Do not be overwhelmed by the grief of the world. It is not your job to complete the task, and yet it is also not yours to ignore it. And so we are all called to do what we can, where we can, when we can. And in the words of Maya Angelou, to do as good as we can until we know better and then do better. And so we are here today to do as good as we can and to figure out if we can figure out a way of knowing better. And with that, I invite us all to take a moment to ground ourselves before getting into the business of the meeting. So just take a moment where you are to feel into being a body in a chair, to feel into the gentle tug of gravity holding you in the chair and the support coming up through the earth in the chair to hold you up. Become aware of your breath, which is always there. And to be mindful of the exchange that represents, how we are taking in fresh oxygen with each in-breath that comes into our lungs and energizes every cell in our body, and how we exhale what no longer serves us in the form of carbon dioxide. Fresh energy on the in-breath and releasing whatever we need to release on the out-breath. And with the out-breath, a little bit of relaxation, feeling our shoulders slipping down, falling back into place. Feeling that little tickle of energy as oxygen enters our bloodstream. And take one more deep cleansing breath in, and on the exhale, just let go to the extent that you can of anything that keeps you from being here and present with us today. And in your own time, find your way back to the circle. I feel better for that. And so we start with a little check-in. And I'm going to try out one. I I have an idea for one of our early agreement circles, because the question that we always used in the agreement circle is, what do you need to be present and show up? And I think an interesting part of that question is, what does it mean for you to show up? So what is showing up mean to you? And the circle, as I see it, is April, Ronnie, Roland, and me. So a way of checking in, what does showing up mean to you today, and how does that relate to how you are today? Over to you, April.
Well, showing up means having focused attention and trying to be in the present and be as responsive as possible. So taking that little breath in between something coming at me and my response, turning my reaction into responses, I guess. And over to Ronnie.
For me, today showing up means attending to my commitments, including my commitments to myself. So self-care, drinking enough water, eating when I need to eat, and being as present as possible within that, all of those kind of moving pieces. Over to Roland.
I think same for what April was saying. It's uh, um, being able to set aside distractions and being present and keeping it simple, not trying to be clever, and attending to what's needed. Over to Ben.
Yeah, and I think that in particular, what seems to mostly get in the way are the stories I tell myself. So, and that definitely, that pause, that ability to hold back the knee-jerk reaction, which usually is some story about how wronged I'm being, or how I'm being attacked, or how unfair this all is, or something like that. So cool. And it seems like we're all fairly present today, so that's a good place to start. And I will bring up our agenda. And so we've got a few things on the agenda, and oh, that can get, pay no attention. This was cleaned up earlier, never mind. And so ordinarily, to start, we start with our grounding and check-in check, and then we take a moment to revisit our North Star. And anyone have an innovative North Star question for today? I'm going to put out, I'm going to try something. Hopefully this will work. It's a question I've been asking myself lately a lot, and I haven't necessarily been answering it. But with all of the news, it's really easy right now to do a lot of imagining worst cases. And I am trying to keep asking myself, what's the best case scenario here? What if things, and we talk about the farmer and the horse, and a lot of times things look like a tragedy and they turn out to be a blessing in disguise, and vice versa. So yeah, for today, I think the question for our North Star is, what's the best case scenario moving forward? And circle rules are always applied, so that you can always pass, and we'll come back to you. And as usual, we'll do 2 rounds. A first round where we all get to share, and a second round where we get to respond to what we're hearing. So April, over to you.
The best case scenario is that we remember to use all the assets that we have and that we link them to a feeling of abundance and reciprocity. And over to Ronnie.
We connect with 100 lifeboat builders around the world and also connect them to each other as it is desired, and enable an easy and productive exchange of skills, information, and resources that increase resilience across the board. Over to Roland.
The best case scenario is that as our brilliant ideas develop, suddenly there will be a burst of mental energy that will engulf the whole planet and everyone will get it. I mean, honestly, right? That seems like a best case scenario. But I like the using being able to use available resources to their best capacity as a means to create I don't know how to put it, a knock-on effect. That there's that we're able to accomplish what we've set out to do, and that lives as an example that's taken up by others, and so on and so on and so on and so on. Over to Ben.
Yep, I like all of that. Well, and I think, part of the everybody gets it is, I guess it's the medicine under the trouble, that hopefully the shock of what's happening is able to bump some people out of complacency. And I want to say something about healing as well, that I think it's, April talked about abundance. And I think there is something about, there's a combination between healing and enoughness.
Yeah.
There's something about well, and I think that's kind of that burst of mental energy that helps people get it. And I think that's the getting it is, we are all enough and what we have is enough. And yeah, that sounds like that would be a lovely scenario. And we've now each had a chance to share a first time, and we'll continue back around the circle for your response to what you're hearing, anything that you're noticing, anything that's standing out to you, anything that it's bringing up. April, over to you.
Well, what occurs to me is there's some some practical bits here, and then there's some real aspirational bits, but they are grounded aspirational bits because they build on the things that we know that work. Over to Ronnie.
A very generous and kind and grounded person of considerable means writes a check to cover the purchase of Spalding Valley Farm, which will establish tenure for the Lifeboat Academy campus in perpetuity.
So sorry, what am I noticing? Is that the
Yeah, noticing response round. What have you noticed so far, and what's coming up as a result of it?
I think what I'm noticing is that we're talking from a place of um uh I guess that, like April was saying, a grounded place, you know. I'm not hearing a need to get more information or to build more ideas or things that are missing. So, and I think in part that is because we also have an understanding that uh, um, for some reason I've got the thing that you and April did, the messy elegance, that things are always there's the appreciative inquiry, things are always in development, things are always shifting and adapting, and that yeah, I think we're coming from there, from that place of having something with the knowledge that it continues to grow and it continues to learn and develop. So back to you, Ben.
Well, and next, it was funny, the words out of your mouth, Roland, somehow helped me see that we are also coming from a positive place, not a fear-based place.
No.
And so it's basically, I'm noticing the energy of, it's really easy to feel overwhelmed and, oh my God, the enormity of what's going on and the helplessness. And I think this question, it's interesting how, at least I know for myself, I'm feeling that a click into flow, sort of like, okay, here we are, what do we do? And so that's feels really good. So cool. So we've revisited our North Star, checked in on the big picture. Now we'll look at our strategy and how we think we actually move things forward. So our seasonal focus right now for each of the guilds, Heartwork is working on lessons learned from Connect the Dots and the Agreement Circle. And Curiosity Guild is meant to focus on the badge project. Finance is continuing to work on the bylaws and getting closer and closer. the Farm Food and Housing Guild is looking at gardens, and I think I'm going to add, and the woofing season is sprouting. So we're also looking at the integrating woofers again into the life of the farm. And outreach is looking at capturing and sharing the takeaways. So those are kind of our immediate projects. And then more long-term, each of those, the lessons learned starts to shape how we think about the Farmistery retreats. And the badge project and the capturing the takeaways is going to build into thinking about how we encourage more reflection and more sharing. And the bylaws hopefully will enable us to start to do outreach around that. And then the farm, it's really about sort of building out, finding our baseline. And we had a really, and I will report on that, but we had a really positive farm discussion around the short term and the long term. Like, how do we frame the short term looking for the long term? And and then again, outreach really focusing on how do we build a system where testimonials become easy to share. So that's kind of revisiting. We're still relatively early on in the year looking at our plan. So just once a quick around one time, any thoughts and things you're noticing, comments, anything for the good of the cause. April, over to you.
Well, I get a sense of things moving on. I also get a sense that I haven't done my homework. So I'll have to go back to that and have a look at that. But that's the sense that I have. On to Ronnie.
There's a lot of focus and clarity around what each guild is doing and how each of those plans is part of the whole. And I think it really speaks to the process that we use, and not only the process we use day to day and the annual process, but year after year, how the iterations are, what's the word, integrated and reflected upon. Over to Roland.
I am noticing how wonderfully clear and simple this presentation style is for the reporting, and I was as I have a tendency of doing, I was torturing myself and trying to figure out, how to write up what we talked about, and then I've got this big thing, and then here it is, already written as a really simple phrase. And so thank you. And I am benefiting from other people's strengths, and I'm very grateful for it. Over to Ben.
Yeah, I think that's a kind of building on both Ronnie and Roland. I am noticing, and I'm noticing this in the guild meetings as well, that it really is go slow to go fast. Because in the beginning, I'm sure there was a lot of frustration with, we have to unpack all of this and we have to think through all of this, and it felt a lot like spaghetti. But the more we do it, the more it the clarity kind of bubbles up. And yeah, I'm really impressed lately with a lot of our guild meetings at how quickly we get through some complex stuff. And I think it's because there's a shared base of understanding. And and that really is the key. And it's affirmation around the relationality and Well, and I think what Roland was saying last time about the messy elegance, you know, using and the letting the process bubble things up. So yeah, long live the process. Okay to move on. All righty. So next up, we take a look at the calendar, and I have to switch screens here. So, and again, we're just looking at the calendar to get a sense of what's on the horizon for the next week or two. And we've got a number of things on a Thursday. It's looking like we've got a meeting with Jake, which is actually, I'm really pleased with that, where Jake is using some of our templates for setting up agreements with another project that he's working with. So bouncing some ideas off us there. And then we've got Heartwork and Farm Food and Housing Guilds both on Thursday. And then Friday, we have our first meeting of the Curiosity Guild, which is very exciting. That's moving forward. And next week, I should mention also, we have V is with us today. V is based in Victoria and is interested in woofing and what we're doing. And so we're having our get to know you meeting. So she just arrived today, leaving tomorrow, and we're just kind of giving her a tour and talking about things. And it has been absolutely lovely so far. I think there's a lot of meeting of the minds, but I'm also thinking then Sonia is arriving next, not this week, but next week. And Sonia is based in Surrey. And likewise, I think, you know, could be only coming for a week to start, but I think there could be a longer term relationship. And we had a really nice get to know you call. And then we have outreach next Tuesday. Ignore the podcast thing. That's a historical thing. And then we've got finance and legal meeting on the 21st. So those are, I think, the big events, at least what seems to be listed. And actually, the other thing that we're talking about today is establishing the next navigation sessions and agreement circles. So those will get added to the calendar today. And beyond that, are there any questions, comments, or concerns about the calendar? April, over to you.
None. Over to Bronnie.
Nope, over to Roland.
I don't know if this is here or later, and just talking through the new scheduling time. With Heartwork, there's a bit of a challenge because of where people are situated on the planet. So wherever it is appropriate to talk about that.
I'm going to add it to the agenda.
Okay, over to Ben.
And well, and then that's that is that. And right, so talking through and right, oops. So next up, guild reports, and again, we'll go through the guilds, and then any issues for discussion we can put on the agenda, and then we'll come back to that. And first up in guild reports is Heartwork. So over to April and or Roland.
Well, I have a less of a question, less of a report and more of a question, because I feel like the short form that we saw pretty much covered it. But there's a note about a mapping exercise. And I'm need to be reminded of what that is and what kind of preparation, who, what, where, when, and why.
Yep, and that is on the agenda.
Okay.
So when we come back to it, we can talk through that.
So I don't have anything to add. I thought that the notes already were pretty much covered it. If there are any details, I'm handing it over to my other two guild members, April and Ben.
I have nothing to add, but I have the same question as you. So the mapping thing just seems to be floating in my head at the moment and is not connected to anything. And I think my name was by it. So I need to figure out what that means.
Mhm.
That's it. Over to
Yes,
back to Ben.
well, and the one thing my memory of the next step, we've talked about a lot of stuff, and the specific task next is it's I think it is related. I think we're ready to badge the lessons from Connect the Dots um, and the agreement circle in a way. We talked about the next step is actually kind of just going through and listing what are some of the techniques or processes that we have learned from Connect the Dots and or agreement circles
Right.
that we would recommend. So it's almost like what are the badges that help keep the agreements alive in the different guilds. So that may also be part of the mapping, might be how those things relate. Yeah, so over to you, Ronnie, to see if there are any questions or comments.
I'm just always reminded of, we probably have that written down somewhere or somewhere else. But if we don't, that's okay, and we'll figure it out. So, but yeah, that all sounds good to me. Over to Roland.
Nothing to add?
Oh, good.
Okay,
Over to you, Ben.
cool. So that's Heartwork, and next up is the Research and Learning Guild. I think the big thing, the recent activity is using people's when to meet responses. I have found a time that seems to work for most of the people that have expressed interest in the Research and Learning Guild. So we are set to meet next Friday at, I think it's 2. So we've scheduled the first meeting. And my intention is to do what we've done in the other guilds, which is go over the driver statement and then start to brainstorm, how where we put our focus. And likewise, and I would add into it's kind of not on, I should probably add something into Asana because this research project idea, April and I had a meeting last week with Anna and Christina from Social Roots, which was just fantastic. And I think there's energy there to move that forward as well. So and it's kind of thinking on the guild level is about involving lifeboat builders, and then the meeting with Anna and Christina, sorry, Anya. Anya and Christina is about creating the infrastructure to support that, and those things coming together at the same time. So, yeah, very excited about. You can ask Roland. I was sort of floating for an hour or two after that meeting. In fact, it kind of ruined the rest of my day because my brain was so buzzing with ideas that I was like, I can't think of anything else today. I've done all my thinking. So I'm gonna, just because April, I wonder if you have anything to add about the meeting.
I had to zoom away before the end of it, so I never did figure out who done it. But I did get a sense that this is exactly what we need to ally with to meet our needs, and that it is a rare place where people and cyber networks come together. And out of that, I think, I mean, it just felt like an explosive place to be, in a good way, a good explosion. So although I was not overly ideated for the rest of the day, as seemed to have happened to Ben, I've been thinking about it ever since. It kind of creeps in sideways into my consciousness. So good stuff.
Oh, and over to Roland and Ronnie for any, actually, I guess Ronnie and then Roland for any questions or comments.
I think it's exciting, and I'm happy that the Research and Learning Guild is happening. And I think it's a really interesting kind of how it evolved out of principles and governance. And I think research and learning is such a more expansive and also specific focus that makes a lot of sense for what we're doing. And I also think it's interesting how we've come across this this platform, this social network that seems to be so much more relational, just because there are real people behind it that we get to actually talk to. It feels totally different than, you know, signing us all up on Slack or Mighty Networks or something like that. So I think it feels in alignment with our ethos, I suppose. Over to Roland.
Well, and that we are in the beta version and talking to people, which gives us an opportunity to give them feedback about what would be most useful for us. And you know, with our interest in replicability and passing it on and all of that stuff, that's awesome. And I'm really pleased at how my co Lifeboat Academy members are buoyed and excited about this, which is part of living in reciprocity and in vicariousness. So over to you, Ben.
Oh, and actually one next step that I failed to mention is because it is a beta, there isn't an integrated electronic onboarding. So that means that Anya and Christina will onboard us personally. And the way that they like that to work is probably this group, our core group, maybe putting Heather and Becca in there too. We would get onboarded, and then so basically they would bring us on board first and then help us to onboard Lifeboat Builders into it. So they would integrate, they would work with us to be able to onboard others, which seems like a great model to me. So that's actually one of the things then we'll need to do is schedule the time when we can get that onboarding for Social Roots. All right, so that's research and learning. So next up is finance and legal. And we met with the lawyers last Monday, and we had a guild meeting last Friday. So there was a lot of activity. And the meeting with the lawyers went especially well. The we went into it, I think we were all somewhat frustrated that the lawyers weren't as creative as we were hoping. And Becca made a really good point, which is we talk about working relationally, but with the lawyers, because I think several of us had this fear of the ticking clock of, every minute with a lawyer is billed and is expensive. And so we weren't taking the time to really have the conversations the way we should have. And so we all agreed we're going to just take the time and actually build the relationship. And partly I think there was also just a natural the process had to develop. We had to kind of stumble in the dark long enough to know what we needed to ask them about. So there was a little bit of, we had to kind of figure out our own ignorance to be able to really be able to benefit from their knowledge. So we got a bit of an education around some specific terminology, like what redemptions mean when you're talking about shares, and adjournments, and shareholder oppression, and which was really, really useful. And in fact, some of our confusion was just we were missing some facts. And once we got those facts, there wasn't confusion. There wasn't a choice to be made in some areas. It was like, this is just how it works. And got a clear sense that they are happy to be working creatively with us, and a better sense of what they need to know from us. So really good meeting with the lawyers. And then Friday, when we met as a guild after that, also really productive conversation. And just it feels like we've really moved forward. And one of the ways in which we've moved forward is our idea of getting the second opinion from other lawyers. There's still some interest in that, but we're kind of expanding what we were calling the lawyers conclave. We're now expanding it because and one of the things that Heather was reminding us of is we have other people that through our Foodlands relationship, there are numerous other community farms that are trying to answer very similar questions. And so in terms of replicability, we have already some specific people who are looking for something like this. And so rather than just talking to other lawyers about it, we're thinking about how we can use the draft that we're developing as a framework for a conversation with other people who have similar challenges. With that idea that some broader perspective will help us sort of make some final choices there. I think that's the report I would give. Roland, anything that you want to add?
No, that was yes, I would like to add something first. That was a really good report. And I was interested and actually buoyed by the fact that that Bill and Elliot understood that we were feeling dissatisfied, and they didn't directly address it as in, are you dissatisfied, but rather sort of addressed it in confirming their engagement and their interest. And so that was really good, so that now the conclave idea, which was originally in my mind to start to look for other opinions and maybe other people to work with, is now transforming into a working together, sharing ideas, broadening the circle to be able to together come up with something. I was going to say something better, but it's not necessarily that it would be better. It would just be different and would bring in different voices and perspectives. So that's what I would add. Back to you, Ben.
Over to April and then Ronnie for any questions or observations.
It just sounds like the clarity was really useful in being able to move in a number of different directions and to have, I guess, some expectations too, kind of made more clear. Over to Ronnie.
Yeah, I agree with April, and my mind kind of went into future visioning mode of how finance and legal could work with research and learning to think about ways to share this information with other people, and with the ways that will be most useful for them. So yeah, everything is practice, everything is useful information for more iterating. Back to Ben. Okay.
Cool. And then moving on to what's next, farm? Yeah, farm, food, and housing. Roll on over to you.
I don't really have anything to add from the report. Yeah, things conversations are good. Things are moving forward. I don't know if that was in the notes, but Heather is volunteering as a guinea pig and coming to the farm. And yeah, we're even the woofing thing I think was in the previous report, so I don't really have anything to add there. And spring is springing, and things are always changing again and forever. So anything you want to add, Ben?
Nope. Cool. So April, then Ronnie, any questions, comments, observations, etc.?
But it seems like spring is doing what it's supposed to do. Things growing and springing ahead. Over to Ronnie.
I've just been seeing the woofer messages, the emails in the inbox of how many messages there are. And I was like, wow, this is busy woofer time. So sounds like y'all kind of have your pick, possibly. So that's cool. That's all. Back to you, Ben.
Cool. Yeah, I'm curious. I have a document. I have it in my notes, which aren't easily accessible, and I think I'll turn it into a Google Doc to share. Because I remember last year we ended up kind of adding up some stats about and trying to go back and recreate it. I'm curious to see how many woofers reach out and then never respond. But so far, and we're doing a much better job of, when they reach out, we respond pretty quickly. So I think there will always be there's playing the odds in terms of how many people express interest and how many people will show up. But we've had a number of Zoom calls with people, and so I'm cautiously optimistic. All right, so over to outreach and Ronnie.
So we had quite a fruitful meeting last time, covered a lot of topics. So we talked through scheduling the Lifeboat Builder support sessions, which we're hoping to confirm at this meeting tonight. where after we confirm the scheduling, I will send out the newsletter this week, hopefully tomorrow or Wednesday latest. We talked about Pam's colleague Ed, who is with CHFBC, specifically in their education branch, about possible mutual benefit and how we might be able to share tools for collaboration with those folks. And we had a kind of broader discussion about how to sort of package our offering for different kinds of audiences. So we included in that was about how our website is definitely geared specifically toward lifeboat builders and less so toward organizations or companies or things like that. So thinking about kind of our different assets in that way and how we might be able to get our message across to more people and different people. We also talked through briefly our weekend and days off protocols, just so that Ben and Roland and I each get our break from lifeboat stuff for a day. And we touched a little bit more into our ongoing social media discussion, which included looping Austin into kind of where we are right now and how he might be able to plug in, as well as the ongoing developments with Social Roots, which Ben has covered. And I also, and we're talking about our process of exiting the Meta platforms. I have finished 2 little lifeboat testimonial quotes, and this is one of them. So I did the process of watching the video, finding the quotes, reaching out to the people, getting permission. And Ruth actually wanted to edit hers a little bit, so she made it a little bit more concise and punchy, which was cool. So that's an example of what I've been working on. And yeah, it was actually really fun to go back and kind of pick those out. And then if you scroll to the bottom, in terms of next steps, Pam was going to write an intro email to introduce Ben and Ed from CHFBC. Ben reached out to Lifeboat Builders about scheduling things. I've talked to Austin about the testimonial collection. We're going to finalize the schedules tonight and send out the newsletter. And I'm meeting with Kath on Wednesday, and I will talk to her about using her automatic transcription software for our videos potentially. So, as well as other ways that she might want to be involved with our whole storytelling plan. So yeah, that's all I have for outreach. Anybody who was at the meeting, do you have anything else you want to add?
The only thing I'm going to add is Pam sent out the contact email and I haven't responded yet. So that's
okay.
That's in my inbox.
Cool.
Why did I? Anyhow, I've been trying to clean up and catch up on email. And anyhow, I'm wondering where that message got to. But yeah, she sent the it's in my court. I need to do the homework. Any for April or Roland, any questions, observations, anything like that?
Nope.
Cool. Alrighty, then we've done our guild reports, and now it is a question of actually talking through the things that we need to talk through. Coordination of schedules. So I'm trying to remember the proposed time. So the proposal is we will have every other week will be an agreement circle and navigating the attentions. So we'll have in any given month, on any week, we'll have either an agreement circle or a navigation session, and we will alternate afternoons and mornings. So we'll have one morning that would be available to Europe time, And we will have one afternoon that will be available to Pacific and Western Pacific. And I can't remember the time, but I think it's Thursday at 2.
I thought it was Thursday at 4:30 to 6.
Okay. That sounds, so it's
But that's just what's in my head. So my
actually, I'm gonna call up
Verify.
that, I've got that email. Let me just look at it so we can actually determine the oops.
I found it. That was the time, 4:30 to 6
Okay, cool.
Pacific.
And then the 4:30 to 6 on Thursday, and then that would be one agreement circle and one navigation session per month would be 4:30 to 6. And sorry, I'm trying to come back to the Thursday. And then the morning is a little bit more challenging. It's segueing into the conversation around for Roland. Ronnie had, I think, a very good suggestion, which is if Nadia, Ronnie, and I, plus maybe Kath, are available, and I think also Heather may be available mornings before work and might be willing to do that time as well, then and we're also talking about the navigation sessions being like group coaching, group peer, sorry, group mentoring. So they don't need to be big. They, we don't need a big circle. So if there were 3 or 4 of us, that would be a perfectly fine use of the time. Ronnie's willing to make, it was Tuesday or Wednesday, and either of those will work for me. So I think that's basically we can say tonight, Tuesday or Wednesday at we have some flexibility. Nadia is available until 10. So we could do them at, say, 8 Pacific, which would be 10 Central, I think. The only thing we really need to figure out is Tuesday or Wednesday and what time, in sometime between 7 and 9, 7 or 8:30. Actually, I guess it's really between 7 and 8. Do we want to start at 7 or 8? Wait,
Or 7:30.
or 7:30. So, and I am completely, they all work equally well for me. Do you have a preference, Ronnie?
I really don't. At this time, Tuesday and Wednesday are both flex days for me, so I just schedule things as needed, and both those mornings I have free, so no.
All right. Well, I'm gonna say Tuesday because then we have a nice Tuesday, Thursday, and let's say 7:30. All right. Okay, so I guess we have a proposal, which
And
is that we will do alternating, and I guess does it matter? I'm assuming we would want to go agreement circle, navigation circle, agreement circle, navigation circle. And do we do morning, afternoon, afternoon? It kind of doesn't, I think it doesn't matter one way or the other, but rock, paper, scissors.
I'm trying to conceptualize it in my head.
I think it doesn't matter how we do it. It will end up being 2 in a row and 2 in a row. I think.
So when you say morning, morning, afternoon, afternoon, do you mean that in 1 week the two meetings would both happen in the morning?
No,
Or
I was thinking this is actually a good question. Is it week 1, week 2, week 3, week 4? And we have I think that's actually the best way of doing it. And I'm not saying that it's necessarily the first week, but that here, I'm going to write this out. Week 1. And I think it doesn't matter whether we do AM, PM, PM, because if we did,
If we did AM, PM, AM, PM, then the navigation sessions would both be in the morning.
right, yeah. So they have to kind of, yeah. So this sort of works as good as, I mean, we could do AM, PM, PM, AM, but
yes,
it still puts them 2
well,
AMs in a row and 2 PMs in a row.
so we're doing this for people in Europe and in Tasmania.
Mhm.
So um, if the people in Europe can only be there in the morning, then they would have a navigation session week 1 and an agreement session week 2, and then week 3, week 4 they wouldn't be able to attend. And
Right.
if we're good with that space of time for people in those places, then it works. Otherwise, is there a way of having uh, you know, I don't know. Mm,
I think, well, let's just try this. So if we had the PM, then that would PM and then AM. But it would still mean
yeah.
from week 4, I think it works out the same no matter what.
Yeah.
But it could we could also do if we're if it's for I'm gonna just say uh Mariana, totally made up person, okay?
Mhm.
But Mariana lives in France, and she would go to navigate to the navigation session in the morning on week 1. But
Mhm.
if the agreement circle was on week 3 and the navigation session what for the PM was on week 4, then she would be able to go to an agreement circle in 2 weeks instead of waiting until the end of the month. Anyway, and I think that I am overly fixating on symmetry.
Yeah.
So I,
But
I
then,
I'm going to
so,
be quiet now.
but then for people who could attend, there would be an agreement circle twice, 1 week and the next week.
Right.
That would be the problem. And there would be a navigation session in week 1. And then then for the people who could attend too, they'd have to go a navigation session, agreement session, agreement. I think this is the best we can do. I think this is, well, let's go once around. So I think this is we have a tentative, I'm going to put this out as a proposal. Week 1 nav session in the morning, week 2 agreement circle in the evening, and it really doesn't matter. So this is the proposal, and then concerns or objections. April, over to you.
No concerns or objections. Over to Ronnie.
I think it's good enough for now, and let's try it. And if it doesn't work, we'll try something else. Over to Roland.
Let's give it a whirl.
We have an agreement. Awesome. And I think continuing on that theme, then the next concern is Nadia has expressed interest in the heart work, and nobody else. And when we look at the when to meet, nobody else has expressed. Actually, that's not true. Roland is the only person who's expressed sort of morning availability, and none of the other people who are involved have. So the
And-
question is,
And it's Nadia is the only guild that Nadia has expressed interest in is the Heart Work Guild.
And where does
So-
Nadia?
Portugal.
Malta.
Okay, so oh, good. Okay, so we need to go with her time availability, right?
Well, this is the interesting conversation,
Yeah.
because how do we make a good choice collectively that doesn't handicap? I mean, if we don't even know if other people are available in the morning, so it may be that we are making it impossible for some people to attend so that one person can.
Yeah, because there are 8 people who are interested
Okay.
in attending Heart Work. 2 people have indicated availability in the morning. One of them only in the morning. And everybody else not in the morning. So there's 6 people who have not indicated any availability in the morning.
Yeah. And so we've talked it through a little bit, and I guess we have a proposal, and we're really seeking advice and thoughts, perspectives on this, which is basically inviting everyone in the guild to say, here's the situation. We're trying to straddle time zones. Most people are available, I think, at our normal time, like the currently scheduled time. Most people are available then. One person is not. And what do we do about that? And kind of putting it to the guild. And part of that also being, can we think creatively about how we can include people without everyone being in the room at the same time? So can we think about, we already record meetings and have the recordings available and send the summaries. Is there a way that kind of limits Nadia's input, but can we think of a way where, in advance, Nadia provides input on the agenda items? So anyhow, this is our basic idea was, this is an interesting challenge. We shouldn't try to fix it. We should put it to the guild and say, what are you thinking?
Yep.
So,
I
okay, let's do once around. So over to you, April.
I agree. I think that there probably, is some accommodation, or maybe more than one kind of accommodation that will even things out. Over to Ronnie.
Yeah, the only thought I have to add is once we get the subgroups going and social routes, that could be a place for input and discussion between guild meetings. And it could be a regular practice of, we're posting the agenda in the group the day before. Please comment any topics, any tensions, anything you'd like to contribute. And then after the meeting, a summary will also be posted. So just kind of maybe using social routes as a way to have it all in one spot. And also the recording. That's all. Over to Roland.
Well, Heart Work meets. So, I like the idea of putting it to the guild And then there's the challenge of how do we put it to the guild if the guild can't all meet at the same time.
Mhm.
And there is something about being able to say something, like to verbalize something as opposed to writing something, responding to things that are written down. And then I was looking at what we just did for the agreement circle and the navigation session, and Heartwork meets twice a month. So would it make sense to stagger, is that the right word? Anyway, that to have a morning meeting and and an evening meeting, because I think those are the two times we've got, because I think that both Heather and Ruth can't meet during the day. So it would be looking at, I have to go back to look at the scheduling thing, but I think that they can only meet in the evenings. So so then if we have one meeting a month that is in the morning and one meeting in the month that is in the afternoon, then that's something that I would feel comfortable proposing to the guild as an option. And it gives everybody a chance to actually be present verbally to stuff. Over to Ben.
Yeah, and I think that's a good option to give to the guild for considerations. Because it might mean if people can't do the morning meeting, then in a way, yeah, I think that's really good to put out for consideration. Um, yeah. Yeah. I don't think I have anything else to add. I think these are all good ideas, and how do we put it back to the guild to work through? We've all had a chance to share one round, and sometimes it's good to do two, just to, see what we're hearing. So back around April, anything to add?
No. Over to Ronnie?
Oh, I had just put in the chat, you could do a morning Heartwork meeting on the Thursdays where there's an event in the afternoon, so that you wouldn't have back-to-back meetings. That's all. Over to Roland.
I guess the question now is, how do we put this to the guild? The only thing I can think of, since not everyone can meet at the same time, is to do it in a written form, so an email or a poll or something like that. Over to Ben.
Well, and or a hybrid. So bring it up at the meeting and put it in an email. I like where Ronnie is going with the thinking about social roots, because it's not just this guild. Like, this is thinking of everything as an opportunity to think through some of these bigger issues.
Yeah.
It's not only here. Scheduling is always an issue. And yes, it's great for people to be in real time and have conversations, and we want to make that available, but sometimes that's just not possible. So, what's a second best alternative? And at least there's an option. So I think for this, doing what Ronnie's suggesting and saying, we're having a challenge around scheduling, and that makes having the conversation around scheduling a challenge. Here's what we want to discuss. Feel free to discuss this in email, and we'll bring it up at the meeting and go, and then we'll post our results, something like that. Yeah, does that feel like, are we good to go forward on this? Or do we need any more? Roland, does that feel okay for you?
Yeah, and this has been really useful at Love Circle. It's just, even just having the opportunity to say things out loud and to think things through. So yeah, I think we're ready to move forward.
Very cool. All right. Any last thoughts before we move on?
Could we quickly go back to the event schedule? I just want to know, when does it actually start?
Uh,
so that I can put the dates in the newsletter.
Yeah, do you want to look at the calendar and just figure out, probably it can start as soon as next week,
Next week. Okay.
don't you think? Or I think this
Yeah.
week would probably be a little quick, a little short notice.
Yeah, definitely next week. Okay. And
Yeah.
we'll just start with the navigation session.
You know, this is where looking with our actual meetings and, because we had that Tuesday, Thursday alternating kind of thing going. And so figuring out, like you were
See
saying, the
what
best, yeah.
Okay.
All right. I think we're good to move on. So the two things, and I'm saying this out loud because we always skip this, choosing a feature for the to go in the newsletter. We're a little off cycle now because we have the newsletter going out this week. I think we're fine if we then actually maybe we can have another newsletter next week. It would basically, so I'm sorry, I'm sort of losing focus. The thing that goes on our agenda that I always fail to notice until after we have left the meeting is we're supposed to pick a feature for the newsletter. So I'm going to highlight that that's something we should not leave today until we talk through what the next newsletter feature is and when that happens. But we also want to come back to the Heartwork mapping project. This is what we have from the notes. Mapping exercise for tools and skills facilitators have and can use to create minimal liberating structures to help maintain healthy relationships in the group. So this has been really, in how we are gleaning the lessons from the deeper dive that we've done around connect the dots and agreement circles. This is this is the pith. So this is what we want to do. What are the tools and skills facilitators can have to create the right amount of structure in meetings that allows healthy relationships in the group? So I think when we were talking about mapping, it really was just kind of brainstorming what those are. And I'm not sure if maybe there's not a mapping part to it. So yeah, April, over to you. This is ringing any bells?
Yeah, now it's starting to ring a bell. It, yeah, it's locating and listing for a start, but it may be that some of the tools and the skills and things have overlaps. And so we might need to map them each as a little blob somewhere to see what the overlap is. And mapping itself is one of those skills that needs to be there. And if we do that as a primary skill or one to look at, first or first-ish, then that helps with other things.
You said that last part again?
Teaching how to do mapping exercises first, and then going into, okay, all these other tools and stuff, how do we locate them? Or is occurring to me a sequence, or a sequence that says that is occurring to me. You can tell it's almost 6 o'clock. But I think mapping is quite a primary skill, especially where there's lots of uncertainty or invisibility. And if people learn that, then they work their way through the fog quicker. Over to Ronnie.
I like this idea. It seems very useful. That's all I have for now. Over to Roland.
Yeah, I don't have anything to add except that this is also to jog memories. It's also why the recordings can be useful in addition to the notes. So we can always go back. It's all on YouTube. We can go back and see what we were thinking over to Ben.
Yeah, and actually now that we're talking, this makes sense because I was thinking connect the dots was what was one of the things that we did was we just mapped,
Yeah.
what were the resources and how do they relate and make it visible. So that is one of our lessons learned. That the mapping itself is a good skill. So I think then, is this enough? I think this makes sense then that we're gonna kind of do what we did with Connect the Dots, only focused in on the skills that
Right.
the tools and skills, and we'll do a similar kind of thing. Clarity. Lovely. All right. So choosing a feature for the coordination or for the newsletter, and then also talking about when does the next newsletter go out? Do we skip 3 weeks? We were planning on having it go every 2 weeks, and now we've just because of how timing has worked out, do we do a 3-week break or do we try to send one out in 1 week?
Hmm.
In terms of gathering considerations around that, I don't think there's much risk involved in either of those. What goes out could be quite light. So I guess, yeah, let's just do a quick round around 1 week or 3 weeks and ideas for the feature item. And including, I don't have any ideas for the feature item. So April, over to you.
If I vote for 1 week, if it's really a light thing, just because of time considerations. I guess for some of this, it's a question of how much do people need to know about something to be able to be triggered into interest with it, I guess. Also, I think if there's no risk with either one of those, and if there is a time crunch, then go with the longer, further away a possibility. Over to Roddy.
Well, what makes sense to me is to put out a newsletter this week, and then just wait 3 weeks to get back on track and just make sure the whole schedule is in the newsletter for this week. I'm also having a thought of, do we need a newsletter every 2 weeks, or is shifting to a monthly newsletter an option? Because we're going to be having this sort of rhythmic schedule going, the guild meetings going. There's not really much else we put in the newsletters. And we could still have a monthly feature if it's an article by Ben or whatever it is. And then if there is something special that comes up, we can always send out a special edition or just an additional newsletter. So I'm just curious what people think about that option. Over to Roland.
I'm happy to defer to whatever feels right for Ronnie because I acknowledge and am grateful that you do it all pretty much.
Yeah.
So, and I agree, the newsletter is more sort of the activities and more the schedule than anything else. So a monthly newsletter would be okay. I guess if I was going to throw in a consideration, it would be more communication keeps us in people's minds. And so it doesn't need to be a newsletter specifically, but it would be worthwhile, I think, thinking about, well, what what keeps us in the forefront of for people. So over to Ben.
Yeah, I think that all makes sense to me. And ditto, thank you, Ronnie, for making this all happen. Um, and I think this is a really good question. Like, what the point is not a newsletter. The point is, how do we stay active in people's minds? We also send out reminders to everyone about the guilds and etc. So there's already, if they've expressed an interest in any of these things, they're getting specific reminders. And I also am wondering about social roots, and because I'm not particularly excited about sending out newsletters because I don't feel like there's much juice. But is there a way that actually we develop an alternative that isn't just, I'm more than happy to write articles and for them to get, disseminated, but I've wanted to trigger more of a kind of writing exchange, that it's more bi-directional or omnidirectional, not just like coming out. So I feel like this is a great opportunity. Yeah, let's let the newsletter drift to a monthly newsletter. My only consideration is then let's make sure that we have, and this is a question that's come up from a couple people, a really good calendar that people can go and check when things are. That's, I think, that really the key. So mostly the newsletter has just been about scheduling stuff. So let's make sure that the website is good for checking when the meetings are. And then maybe even kind of we could be phasing out the newsletter as social roots where something else emerges. So yeah, that works for me. So I think the agreement then is we will go to a monthly newsletter. You'll send out a newsletter this week that will have the schedule for the next 3 weeks. Then we will have one the next one after that will be the monthly newsletter. That also gives us some time to figure out what other kind of communication. Well, this goes back then to the outreach conversation around social media. So this just gets factored into as the newsletter fades, kind of into the background, how does the social media fade into the foreground? Sounds good. I think that brings us to the end of the agenda. And Ronnie.
I still don't know what the feature is for this week. We previously had talked about your bullies article. So
Yeah.
I guess I could put that in.
Yeah, let's do that.
Okay.
And I have also another question for the mapping project. Were we talking about doing it for Heartwork? Is that just for the Heartwork Guild, or is that it's just for the Heartwork? Okay.
It's for the thing the guild is, the thing that Heartwork is working on is cross-pollination for the other guilds.
Yeah.
So it is Heartwork thinking about what are the tools that we have learned are effective that we would share with the other guilds.
Okay.
Right. So it's Heartwork's work, but then with an eye towards, and we're sharing this out because it might be useful to other, caretakers.
Got it.
And it really is the basic, this is the start of our badge list for the Heartwork Guild, which then I think we can take up research and learning, can use this as a bit of a template to then start to think about how to talk to the other guilds about their own badge list. So I think we're good. All right. 2 rounds really quick. One is anything missing, any last, oh wait, there's this one last thing. And then after that, last thoughts for the good of the cause. So anything that we're missing before we're done, April, over to you.
Are we skipping the Trading Wheels checklist for land acknowledgement?
For now.
Okay,
Yeah, and actually I suspect that becomes part of what we map for Heartwork.
great. Okay, thank you. Over to Ronnie.
Nothing to add. Over to Roland.
I already added it over to Ben.
Cool. I'm good. And so last thoughts for the good of the cause, a way to say goodbye. April, over to you.
Thank you. Once again, the process helps emergence and something rises up out of the boiling cauldron of our minds. On a Monday late afternoon, isn't it a miracle? Over to Ronnie.
Tokens to everybody for getting through another round of scheduling. We did it. We did it. Over to Roland.
Bye. I gotta go make dinner for people.
Okay.
Cool. Yeah, scheduling. Ugh.
I know.
Why can't everyone just live in the same time zone and always be available?
Yeah.
All right. Thank you all, and well, we'll be seeing you around.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye now.